Everybody, it's the Commodore from the Clan of the Grey Wolf, and you are watching the weekly Wringer series here on clanofthegraywolf.com. So, got to wrap up the question from last week first and foremost. We've got a question about disappointing movies from last week, and there's a lot to get to. So I'm definitely in a hurry to jump into all the contributions that you guys threw out there. Also, then I'm going to give you, as I always do, some of my own thoughts about the most disappointing movie that I've ever seen in the theater, answering my own question. And then I'm going to also probably throw in some of the questions that you guys brought up during just the conversation that was going on at the same moment while we were, kind of having conversation about disappointment. Some interesting questions came up that I'd like to talk about as well. Now, then I'll, as I always do, I'll set you up with a question for next week. Next week's question is going to be about creating an ideal block of shows from the past. So stay tuned for that. You'll be able to create your own block of shows, and I'll explain all about it when I ask the question for next week. All right, so here we go. Last week, you'll recall that I asked a question about what was the most disappointed you've ever been with a film you saw in the theater. Maybe not a movie you saw later on in DVD, but something you actually went to the theater and saw in the wake of me seeing Captain America and being very disappointed. First things first, I'll say what I didn't like about Captain America. There are actually a lot of things I didn't like about it, but and what I'm hearing now is, so you guys know there's a big difference between how critics see a movie, how the public sees a movie, how your friends who might be part of the public see a movie, so on and so forth. So initially, the press on Captain America was very good. The reviewers were all coming out saying it was very good. There were some select few. I know Richard Roper came out and said, it was not a good film and all these other kinds of things. So there were some people that were dissenting, but they were in the vast minority. Most people really did like the movie, especially from the review standpoint. When I saw it, I had a little bit of that coloring, I guess, on it before I actually saw the film, but what's interesting now is that there's been a lot of, I guess, backlash in that, and there are definitely communities out there, especially folks that really enjoy the Captain America brand or were Captain America fans, that are really saying, man, this just does not do a good job of the treatment of Captain America's story, and probably could have been handled in a lot of different kinds of ways. I think that's very important, and I think that's something to look for when we're talking about disappointment. That comes up in a lot. The reason I bring this up, guys, is because it really mirrors a lot of the same conversations that many of you have throughout the question and your answers from last week. There's just a lot going on. Maybe the fans of something that are really having higher expectations end up disappointed a little bit more than folks that are just out to have a good time and see a good movie. So we'll have that old debate again, I guess, a little bit as well. But in terms of what I didn't like about Captain America, I didn't like that he was kind of just Captain Meek. Captain I don't like bullies. I'm not going to spoil anything for anybody out there that is worried I'm going to spoil the movie. I'm definitely not. But I'll say a few things that are publicly known and just talk about the fact that I don't like them. He kind of is just Captain Meek and, Captain I don't like bullies. Well, you know what? That's not Captain America. Captain America certainly doesn't like bullies, but Captain America doesn't like a lot of things that are un-American, right? And, the fact that they kind of focused on that piece of the puzzle, almost that he, grew up kind of being bullied and just became anti-bully, and that's why he's Captain America. I didn't like it. I understand what they're playing with. I know they're playing with the idea of, hey, what if, when you're a kid and you're getting bullied, the only thing you think about is, well, what if I just got big and just beat the crap out of everybody? Well, okay, that's a good little adolescent male fantasy, but it's not necessarily, Captain America, right? I know there are different accounts of the origin stories and all that kind of stuff for Captain America, but I just thought that was kind of weak sauce. You know, make the center and fulfillment of something else in this movie. They do. The reason why I say that is because it becomes less important the things that he does say that are really cool. You know, he says things like, "Oh, these people are laying down their lives, and it's time for me to lay mine down." Well, that kind of gets. That's a great thing to say. It's a very noble thing for someone like Captain America, or the person that would be Captain America, to say. But that gets totally blown over by the fact that he's just doesn't like bullies. And I just thought that was a bad way to ignore the best parts of Captain America to celebrate the worst. I really didn't like the woman in the film. I didn't think she was that good. Sorry. There were some good performances in it, but by and large, it just didn't strike me as a very good film. You know, maybe I'm completely and totally wrong with it, but there were a lot of things. I'm not going to get into it. It would waste way too much time, and I have way too much to talk about from what you guys have put in this week. So I'm just going to keep on moving. But if you want to talk more with me about Captain America, feel free to send me a PM or an email at commodore128@clanofthegraywolf.com. Okay, so let's get into this. I wanted to ask you about disappointing movies that you saw in the theater that were so disappointing, like the way that I saw Captain America. But I asked you about the one that disappointed you the most. We all know that there's been some great movies out there in terms of the hype machine. Oh, these are going to be great, fantastic movies, unbelievable. And then you see them and you're like, what? This is the worst ever. Particularly for those of us that are geeks and that do like movies that are a little bit, let's say, off the beaten path. Or might have a subject matter that's a little bit geeky, or that might be a little bit, off the mainstream, right? So, let's get into it. I'm going to say this first and foremost. There were a lot of recurring themes. Secondly, many of you mentioned movies I haven't seen, so I can't really speak to them. I haven't seen them either in the theater or on DVD, so I can't really speak to them. But I'll certainly pay attention to the ones I think are the most worthy of conversation, as being just really bad movies or really bad disappointments. So I think there are really only two categories here, and I'm gonna try to keep it to that. All right, Youngblood kicked us off with a conversation that many of you picked up, and that is Harry Potter sequels. Many of them got mentioned. Different sequels by different people, which is interesting, because Youngblood mentioned Chamber of Secrets, which I think is as good a choice as any, but I'm kind of biased because I really don't like Harry Potter. So if any of you were, hoping to find out that the Commodore was a tremendous Harry Potter fan, I'm so sorry. I really couldn't care any less. I like the idea of fantasy for kids. I just never really liked the idea of Harry Potter. It just never really got to me. I did see the first movie. I think I even saw the second movie, but I did not. I was so kind of turned off by the whole thing, I just didn't see anything else. It just never really got to me. It didn't have something that I thought worked on both levels. Call me crazy, I'm clearly the one in the minority there, but I really just didn't like them. That being said, I think it's a great candidate for disappointing sequels. Especially if you're some of the folks out there that have read the books and were really into the experience of the books. Because, as we all know, when books get adapted into films or plays or anything get adapted, musicals get adapted into films, a lot of times they lose some of their luster. So I'm not surprised to hear that many of you put Harry Potter down as some of the biggest disappointment, or the biggest disappointment you've ever experienced in the movie theater. But alas, I haven't seen, 7 of them now? No, it's not that many. But anyway, I haven't seen a lot of them now. It feels like 100, so let's just keep it at that. I haven't seen 100 of them now, and I'm really not interested in seeing them. Clocktown followed up with Last Airbender, which got echoed by a few of you later on. So I thought I would mention it simply because I was never a big fan of Avatar. And by Avatar, I mean cartoon Avatar, not James Cameron's Avatar. I was never a big fan, and I'll be honest with you, I have not seen this movie either, but I thought, I heard enough people talk about that this was just not a good movie. I'm going to go out on a limb. Say I actually do like M. Night Shyamalan, although I haven't seen, I would say probably most of his movies. I've seen the ones that you probably have to see to understand him. And I'll say this too. I really, maybe I'm just crazy, but I love the movie The Village. I really, really enjoyed that movie. And maybe you just have to be in a certain mindset to kind of click with it. But I really loved that movie. And I hear many people really just crap all over that film as just being terrible. And I just loved it. But that's just me. So it's not an M. Night Shyamalan thing for me, but I heard it was just really bad. So completely understand why that would get listed here as well. Mr. K talked about Sucker Punch, and I'm going to talk about this because it started the conversation about Sucker Punch. Again, one that got echoed many, many, many times after that. I have not seen this movie either. When are you going to get to see it? All right, fair enough. I'm going to talk about some of the movies that I have seen moving forward. But Sucker Punch was so poorly reviewed by so many people, and people that I generally do listen to and do value the opinion of, really thought this was a stink fest. And so I mention that because I'm like many of you. I saw the trailer for this movie and I thought to myself, this is going to be fierce. It just looks so fantastic. And it really just, from everything I've heard, just failed to meet expectation. And so I think that is worthy of the conversation of biggest disappointment, because I think many people were very, very excited to see this movie. All right, now let's see what else. We've also got the Shiro Wolf that talked about the Lost World, and I wanted to put that one on there because that is a tremendous disappointment. Any of you that saw Jurassic Park and then saw Lost World would be disappointed in any capacity. But those of you that had read the books would be even more disappointed. And let's not even get into Jurassic Park 3. The pain train just kept rolling there. So that one definitely is worthy of mention. Here's one that just stopped me in my tracks when I was reading it. And many of you are probably not going to like this, but I'm absolutely going to have to put it on here because it's just so true. And that is Avatar. And by now I actually do mean James Cameron's Avatar. Oh, God. Guys, get past the visuals. Get past the effects, which, by the way, weren't even that great. The visuals were good. The effects were not even that great. And this movie was a pile of garbage. It's terrible. It's a terrible movie. Avatar was just horrible. The story was, you guys, it's well documented. Sonic Rose talked about it first. That's who I have. And then it kind of trickled down. A few other people mentioned it. But I just thought I'd pull this out here. It's a terrible movie. The story is ridiculously contrived. The characters are empty and completely devoid of all kinds of feelings. The simplicity by which the characters get portrayed is just awful. The entire plot, it gets blown up with gaping plot holes time and time again. It's just a terrible film. And were I to have seen that movie at the height of its popularity, when everyone was talking about how amazing and incredible it really truly was, I would have been so disappointed that I could have cried in the theater, because everyone was saying this is the greatest movie of all time. Oh my God, James Cameron, it's going to be the greatest film ever, and blah blah blah. This is one of those movies, guys, and I'm going to talk about this now. You know, there is a feature in Entertainment Magazine. I think it's E. I think it's pretty sure it's E Weekly. Now they do every once in a while. They'll do a re-review of movies that are a few years old. Have a couple of years age on them, and a lot of times those grades will get adjusted down or up. For example, one of the first ones I saw was Peter Jackson's King Kong. The initial grade for it, I think, was a